Welcome to this week's Bible Topics discussion. We're glad you're with us today as we discuss some of the miracles of Jesus. We've titled this one, Miracles of Many Fed.
Most of us have heard of Jesus feeding the 5,000, told in John chapter 6, verses 3 through 13, which says, "Then Jesus went up on a mountainside and sat down with his disciples. The Jewish Passover festival was near. When Jesus looked up and saw a great crowd coming toward him, he said to Philip, 'Where shall we buy bread for these people to eat?' He asked this only to test him, for he already had in mind what he was going to do. Philip answered him, 'It would take more than half a year's wages to buy enough bread for each one to have a bite.' Another of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, spoke up. 'Here is a boy with 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fish, but how far will they go among so many?' Jesus said, 'Have the people sit down.' There was plenty of grass in that place, and they sat down. About 5,000 men were there. Jesus then took the loaves, gave thanks, and distributed to those who were seated as much as they wanted. He did the same with the fish. When they all had enough to eat, he said to his disciples, 'Gather the pieces that are left over. Let nothing be wasted.' So they gathered them and filled 12 baskets with the pieces of the 5 barley loaves left over by those who had eaten."
Some of us have heard of Jesus feeding the 4,000, mentioned in Matthew chapter 15, verses 29 through 38, which says, "Jesus left there and went along the Sea of Galilee. Then he went up on a mountainside and sat down. Great crowds came to him, bringing the lame, the blind, the crippled, the mute, and many others, and laid them at his feet. He healed them. The people were amazed when they saw the mute speaking, the cripple made well, the lame walking, and the blind seeing, and they praised the God of Israel. Jesus called his disciples to him and said, 'I have compassion for these people. They have already been with me 3 days and have nothing to eat. I do not want to send them away hungry, or they may collapse on the way.' His disciples answered, 'Where could we get enough bread in this remote place to feed such a crowd?' 'How many loaves do you have?' Jesus asked. 'Seven,' they replied, 'and a few small fish.' He told the crowd to sit down on the ground. Then he took the 7 loaves and the fish, and when he had given thanks, he broke them and gave them to the disciples, and they in turn to the people. They all ate and were satisfied. Afterwards, the disciples picked up 7 basketfuls of broken pieces that were left over. The number of those who ate were 4,000 men, besides women and children."
These miracles are both recorded in the New Testament, but there's also a mention of a similar miracle in the Old Testament. In 2 Kings chapter 4, verses 42 through 44, which says, "A man came from Baal-shalisha, bringing the man of God 20 loaves of barley bread baked from the first ripe grain, along with some heads of new grain. 'Give it to the people to eat,' Elisha said. 'How can I set this before 100 men?' his servant asked. But Elisha answered, 'Give it to the people to eat, for this is what the Lord says, they will eat and have some left over.' Then he set it before them, and they ate and had some left over, according to the word of the Lord."
The encouraging thing about this week's episode is that Jesus is still doing miracles. We hear of them often. There are still lame, blind, crippled, mute, and many others who are suffering from other problems. They need a touch from Jesus too to heal their suffering. Some people suffer from physical ailments, but many suffer from emotional, mental, and spiritual ailments. Maybe you're suffering. Jesus can help. Call on him.
We love to read the miracles of the Bible and thought y'all would enjoy hearing these two from the New Testament and the one from the Old Testament. We don't hear a lot about that one, do we? We thought that maybe there was some folks who had never heard the one in the Old Testament that involved the prophet Elisha. Well, that's it for this week. Please like, comment, and share, and let us know if you have any questions. We'd love to hear from you.
See you next week. Be blessed.